Carve up the deal pie, sustainability style. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Futurist Mindset Show. My name is Tessa, and I'm here to introduce you to your host, Reagan Rodriguez. Reagan is a futurist that teaches stratosphere wealthy legacy families how to become impact investors. Hi, Reagan. How are you?
I am doing better than I deserve. How about yourself, Tessa?
I'm doing wonderful, and I love doing these shows with you. I learn something every time. So
Yeah, we were
to
just
dive
talking
in.
a few minutes before we hit the record button, and we were just talking about a few clients of yours, and one of them that I agreed with you that or with that client of yours that you said they're not really ready for an exit yet. They have children, and they're going to pass that on to them. And I said, then I wouldn't sell either. I wouldn't want an exit if I was in her situation as well. So you're right, Tessa. We do sometimes do a little small talk about things that you run into when you and I do trainings like this. So
Yes, I'm very lucky. I get to borrow him more than you guys.
So yeah, we'll get started. Did you do the intro or did I?
I did.
All right.
You
Shows
missed
you were
me
my
bragging
mind.
on you.
I'm focused.
Bragging.
All right, we'll get started then. So based on feedback that I received last week, I thought I'd go over my BIBO. Okay, stands for buy in, buy out. And that is a strategy for buying a whole company or a part of a company without you having to use cash or borrowing money from banks. And it's a very clever strategy. I've developed over it the last 15 years since I've been running Fifth Avenue Capital, which is a global community of deal makers. And they come to me for advice. Why? Because I have 15 different strategies, and BIBO is just one of those strategies. When I was that typical entrepreneur that did things the old-fashioned way. And then I discovered buying companies through mergers and acquisitions. And that created an exponential growth. And it was a fascinating topic on how to put together deals that can grow a business very quickly or acquire a business that's well established instead of starting one maybe from scratch. Now, BIBO is effectively, it's a consulting agreement that's going to get your foot in the door, and then you can either buy the balance of that business or you can sell it all together with that other business owner. Do you see what I'm doing, Tessa? It's very win-win between you and that business owner, because most small businesses, they're not ready to be sold. They don't have their data room together. They don't have that information. And often what I've noticed is their accounts are a mess. And quite often they have accounts that are optimized for tax savings rather than for selling that business, right? And they often have systems or certain processes that are going to rely heavily on the owner's contribution. And what that does is that makes it very hard to sell that business independently of the owner. So there is a huge amount of value by helping that business owner maybe transition from owner manager to shareholder so that then they can create a capital event for themselves. And then ultimately on the other side of that, you then have a business that you can pay cash up front for, and you don't have to borrow from banks that then would be a loan. And now you can create your own capital event when you go to sell that business. So what I think might be best for me to cover today is that first area. And it's what are the best types of businesses to do this with, how you're going to find them, and how you start a conversation with these business owners that ultimately can take you towards doing this type of deal. The second part will be all about the pitch to that owner. What are you offering them? Why is it so compelling deal for them? And why should they go ahead and move forward with you versus many of the other options, versus going through a business broker or their accountant or a lawyer? So you need a very compelling pitch. And then the third thing is our proprietary valuation tool. We were talking about this, Tessa. You know about this. Very similar to Value Builders, right? And I have something that's been built just for the Fifth Avenue Underground Club. And not only will it allow you to do an in-depth analysis of the business, but more importantly, it will tell you where that business can be improved. So I will show you the areas where it's strong, and then the areas where it's weak, and where we can maybe add some value. And that's critical to that pitch that you give to the business owner in terms of how you're going to add value and how you're going to work closely together with him or her. So let me walk you through how that valuation works. Or look, we will give them reports on that company that you've targeted. Let me get into the fourth thing, legal and closing. It's all well and good getting someone to agree, but then you have to bring it over that line to then have that contract signed, and then you being signed on as a shareholder, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get into some detail. Obviously, as you know, I provide all those documents, and we provide that efficiently. Number 5, let me get on. Executing the fix. How do you add value? Ultimately, what you want to do is you want to help that business owner improve their business, and you've got to be able to put your money where your mouth is. You've got to be able to demonstrate that you can add value, or else you're not going to be able to acquire the business. You're not going to be able to really move it forward any further. So you need to make sure that you're in that top 1% of the planet that are going to say they're going to do what they're actually going to do, right? So I help you execute that fix so that you bring real value to that table. Let me go into the number 6. How do you buy that business? You might buy a stake at the beginning, but how do you take that entire company, or how do you sell that business together once you've added value? Another option is to sell it as an exit for yourself. In fact, I go into what I'd like to do next. I can go into that maybe next week. I can get into creating capital events where you sell something and then you get a large amount in just one go, right? And you do that on what's going to give you game-changing improvements on your wealth and in your lifestyle. It's beyond income. Income is just what you spend. It's the capital events that are really going to create those game-changing moments. We also talked about the idea of roll-ups. So instead of selling the business, you can use it as a platform to then add more businesses and then create more shareholder value. Big companies are far more valuable than small ones. And it's not just a straight line that's increased in value because it's bigger. It's exponential value, because as you get bigger, there are then more possibilities for selling the businesses to maybe a larger company. And when you have competition, supply and demand is going to dictate, and then price goes up. So creating a big company can be a factor of putting several small businesses together. So I do know quite a bit of people that like to use this buy-in, buy-out as a strategy to start roll-up, or as a methodology to build that roll-up. So I'll get into that. I get into that detail as well. And then finally, the last section, I get into case studies. It's all good to listen to me about how these ideas work, but it's even better from that horse's mouth, from people that have implemented this, and the lessons and the wrinkles that they've bumped into, by then implementing these strategies. So I do get quite into depth on the case study area. Now, you might think this is a saturated market. There's private equity, there's venture capital, there's plenty of money floating around. But what people don't realize is how much of the economy is actually driven by that small to medium-sized businesses. Now, this equates to effectively 50% of GDP in most mature economies versus 90% of the workforce. So it is a huge and systemic part of our economy. The problem is most of them are just subscale. They're just too small for the big purchases to take, seriously for those big ones. Yet these can still be substantial small businesses. They might do 5 million in revenue. They might do 10 million in revenue, and that's still qualified as a small business. So there is a great deal of opportunity. There is a huge marketplace. We also have a huge generation of baby boomers who are looking to want to retire, and they're trapped in this prison, which is their own small business. And they find it very hard to remove themselves from them. So if you can help that person to retire and create some value for yourself along that way, hey, that's mutually beneficial for everyone to grow. It's win-win. It is a win-win deal. It's a good strategy. You have the opportunity to create a consulting fees. You are trading time for money when you do that, and time is finite. So you don't want to be stuck in a trap of trading your time for money. So you also get equity, and you get to participate on the upside. Now, let's assume you're a consultant or you're a coach, and you don't add lots of value, then they're going to sack you. But if you do add value, then your earnings are limited by the amount that you charge, right? So by becoming an equity partner, if you hit it out of the park, then you're also going to get a big piece of that upset, right, that you help create. And then you also get the exit value when you go to sell that equity or when you buy the rest of that company. And then you go on to sell it later. So this is buy in, buy out in a nutshell. This is part of what I teach at the Fifth Avenue Underground Club. And I look forward to meeting any of you at one of our live events. And next week, Tessa, I think we can get into sourcing and sourcing capital.
Well, I do want to say you mentioned case studies, and you actually have a case study to share with us, kind of. Well, a former client of the flooring company that you were going to tell us about.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Thank you for the reminder. About an hour and a half ago, I had a Zoom meeting with somebody that I had helped do this that just acquired a flooring company. And I said, all right, I wanted to know how well he's actually applying what I teach. And go ahead and put the 4 things that he said to me in the chat. Go ahead and read them out loud for everybody. Give me a chance to take it.
Yeah. Step 1, found a motivated business seller. So he found a motivated business seller. Step 2, negotiated a deal for little upfront capital. And step 3, fixed it. And step 4, sell the business for 6 or 7 figures.
Let's talk about the first one. You and I just talked about this before we went on. Mm-hmm. You said that you have a client of yours that, based on last week's, you were motivated and asked that person if they want an exit. Yep. And it's that simple, right? It's just either they do or they don't, or it's just like saying, hey, I've got a friend or a business associate. This is what they do. And what did that client say to you? That right now?
Yeah, right now they don't want to exit. They want it to be a legacy business. So
that's right.
Pass on to their kids.
Yeah.
They wanted to have, there were some things that match up to what you were suggesting we ask. So I saw some signs, and then, in the big picture, it's probably not the best fit for me because they don't want to exit soon. So that bigger exit doesn't it may not be as enticing for me to get involved in shared equity for that reason, but it was I loved the suggestions that you had in the cues that we're listening for.
That's right. So what was the first step that this former
Found
client
a motivated business seller.
Yes. So he found somebody, they were a flooring company, and he knew that he could improve it. What's number two?
Negotiated a deal with little upfront capital.
Okay. This person said that they wanted more money. He said no. I said good. He said they also said they needed money because their lease is going to run out in December. I said, don't you dare agree to sign on that lease. And he said, oh no, because we're going to exit. Perfect. Good attitude. We're going to exit before that. The goal is to exit before September is what he should put on his calendar. And he also found go ahead. What's number three?
Number three is fixing the business. Fixed it.
So how did he know he could fix it? Remember how last week I mentioned a book, and then I also mentioned a book that I said was also written by the founder of Value Builders. When I read a book like that has something to do with acquisitions or growing a business, my goal is to highlight a few parts that I know I could apply. Well, this guy did the same thing. And he went back and reread a book that was on his shelf called The E-Myth. I think there's a new one now called The E-Myth Revised. He went and saw the other one and just kind of did what I suggested, is that now really keep your eyes and ears open. A different eye and ear than before, right? On what you're saying. So he looked and thought, well, in this book it says that a lot of people spend money on advertising, and yet they could get new business by just going to the same existing customers, visiting them or giving them a call, asking them how they're doing, ask them how happy they are with the service. If they're not, then you fix it. And then at the very end, it's as simple as saying, can you think of somebody you can refer to me? That's simple. So why go out and advertise and spend money on that when, if you've got 10 customers, what if 8 of those referred you to somebody? You didn't have to pay for it. So he asked this guy, do you ask for referrals? No. Do you keep in touch with your existing customers? No. So he knew that's an area how he could grow it. Then he asked him another question that, that they're not happy with the business, they're burnt out, they're not motivated. Now, I kept asking him, are you sure you didn't put more than $1 down? And he said, well, Reagan, and he didn't, okay? But he said they have an ugly website, it's outdated, they had other things, so I did put money on that. I asked him, I could just come clean, how much have you spent on business that you're not supposed to spend more than $1 on? He said $5,000. That's not bad. That's not bad because he did things like websites, that kind of thing. And then I said, now, if they kind of strong arm you, are you going to put any more money down? He said, only if they have some large purchase order and they can't afford it and it would bring the business in, then yes. I said, okay, did you tell them that? He said, yes. And I said, and tell me why, what was your logic around it? And he did have some logic around it. The logic was by me saying that, I could negotiate higher equity. So I said, okay, and how much equity did they agree to give you? He said 50%. Good. I love hearing from students like that. That's awesome, right? And he said, but Reagan, we do need to grow things because when December comes around, what's going to happen with They want me on that lease. And I don't want to be on that lease. I said, you don't want to. The goal should be, as you're growing revenue, posted online, listed online, excuse me, and get it sold before December happens.
That's great.
So anything else? I know I
No, that was a great, very good example for us too. So thank you.
absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, if you are interested in finding out more about Reagan or Fifth Avenue Capital, you can hit the bell to get notifications when we go live. And you can also visit the website, 5thaavc.com, and find out more, or reach out to Reagan on the contact form. So we will see you all next week. Have a great